So I thought I'd do a video of my bonsai collection. I haven't uploaded any videos recently, but seem to have more time on my hands like most people due to the lockdown, and perhaps this will be of interest to you. So the first tree I'd like to show you is, I believe, a hornbeam which I collected around about 15 years ago. It was a small sapling. It did have an interesting bend in the trunk, and this has been developed and thickened over the years. The branching of the hornbeam is such that it has a natural pattern to it which lends itself very well to bonsai, and hopefully you'll agree this is actually developing well. Recently repotted into this plastic bonsai pot. This next tree is a hawthorn. It has quite a long, slender trunk, which is quite characteristic of hawthorn, so I think it's quite acceptable. The leaves are coming out, it's mid-March, and I would expect there to be some flowers and berries in due course, which adds a little bit more interest. And also in due course the trunk will become a bit more textured, which will add further interest. So this is, I think, developing well. The next tree I'd like to show you is an oak tree. This was planted from an acorn, grown in a larger pot, and only recently repotted into the pot that you see before you. There was a certain amount of root pruning that had to be carried out in order to get it into this smaller pot, and I've mainly just been cutting off branches, but very little other work has been carried out, and I think it's developing well. The buds are swelling and it looks healthy. I expect that in due course the roots at the base of the tree will be exposed, and the tree will look more natural. Although having looked at oak trees growing in parks, the roots generally don't grow exposed. This next tree is a field maple. This has also been recently repotted, and I've also cut back some of the larger branches to the top of the tree to hopefully create a more tapered trunk. And this is growing quite vigorously. There's lots of extra buds which I can develop if necessary to create a different, more fuller tree in due course. This next tree is a myrtle tree. It was originally a cutting, grown in a larger pot, around about 5 or 6 years old, which is quite surprising as the trunk is thickened and is showing quite a nice textured finish. To the right hand side there's another cutting that I've taken. I have a myrtle bush in my garden, so I have a ready supply of cuttings as required, and I believe these do produce very interesting and easy to grow bonsai. This next tree has an interesting history. It's a small version of a fig tree. It was growing wild in one of my pots, and I dug it out and planted it in the pot that it is currently in. I'm thinking of growing it over a rock, but I'm waiting for the roots to develop a little bit more before formally training it. But it certainly is an interesting addition, and perhaps I'll upload a further video once it comes into leaf, and it will show its true colours. This tree also has an interesting history. It was cut out of a brick wall on one of the building sites that I was working on by a builder, and I believe it is a silver birch. There was a silver birch tree growing nearby, and the leaves and buds do look like silver birch. There's no sign of the interesting white bark that develops, but maybe this will develop in time, and if it does I will upload an update on this. This is a pretty standard maple tree. It was again a cutting which I have grown in a larger pot and now cut back and replanted in a smaller pot. and this obviously requires further development, but should be an interesting addition to the collection. For those who have followed some of my other videos, you might recognize this as a dwarf pomegranate tree. This was a cutting from my larger pomegranate trees, and is really not that old, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and does lend itself well to bonsai. The pot that it's in may be a little bit small, and I'm probably going to replant it into a larger pot so that the structure of the tree can be appreciated more, and in particular the roots, which are developing quite well. Maybe I'll just do a quick close-up and you can see how the roots are developing. You should just be able to see that. This tree has also an interesting history. It was originally planted from a seed taken from a green Canadian maple tree, which I've more or less kept in this pot for its entire life, and this is probably why the roots have developed in the way they have. The maple tree is not ideal for bonsai, as the leaves are relatively large, but it does produce an interesting leafless tree, and I'm hoping that as the tree develops, the leaves may grow smaller and be more in keeping with a bonsai. This is a second Canadian maple collected at the same time, and this time it was a red maple leaf, and this has also developed well, but again not ideal as a maple, as the leaves are large, but hopefully in time these will become smaller. Finally, I'd like to show you this corkscrew willow, which was a cutting taken last year and has now been cut down and repotted, but still has a long way to go until it's a decent bonsai. Just to give you an overview of the trees that I have illustrated in this video, they are generally kept in this formation on the patio, and I'm hopeful that this video has been of interest to you. Here's some of the other ones on the other side. I've recently taken some root cuttings of field maple when I repotted it, and this is a new experiment for me, and we'll see how these develop. And that's really the end of the video. I'm hopeful that everyone will stay safe and keep well in these trying times, and wishing you all well. Thank you.